To mark President Trump's first 100 days in office, I spoke with a panel of voters, some of whom support his administration, others don't. Our conversation lasted more than an hour. Here is some of that conversation. Ralph, think about how you felt on election night. How do you feel today?
I feel pretty good about it. I think he's better prepared this time than he was the first time, and I could see that in some of the choices.
And Mark,
right now.
how do you feel?
I think I'm still just in a wait and see mode, Major, to be honest with you. I'm kind of done with the executive orders. We have a government for a reason. We have a process. I would really like for us to start utilizing that process.
Joan, how do you feel?
Embarrassed, disgusted, discouraged. He has done more to ruin the reputation of the U.S. in 100 days than has been the last 100 years.
I'm disabled, I'm adopted, I'm a birthright citizen. I have family members that are in the LGBTQ plus community. I feel very targeted and very unrepresented and scared.
I don't understand why you would vote for a person who has 34 felonies. He was a convicted felon, and no one else would have gotten away with that if it was a person of color.
Ralph, Ashley, or Mark, any one of you want to jump in on anything you just recently heard?
Well, I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I don't feel threatened by anything. I haven't had anything happen to me personally, my checking account, my savings accounts, my anything. So I don't know about that.
I'm also disabled. I've had 5 brain surgeries. I've had 5 spine surgeries. I'm probably going on my 6th in July to fuse my spine down to T8. I have been ordering one of my critical medications from Japan because it's cheaper, even with the shipping, to order it from Japan. It is craziness. So we do need to make more of our pharmaceuticals here, because what if one of those countries decides to just cut us off or put something in those medications to hurt us?
Mark?
I think the ability to come together like this and fully disagree, some of us be happy, some of us be embarrassed or angry. We need to do this. I feel like we've lost this. Let's listen to each other. Let's empathize with each other. Because otherwise, this is a country that's going to split one way or the other.
What, Mark, you don't think it's split already?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I mean, and this is what.
No, I agree with you.
This is what Trump wants. He wants it split because it makes it a lot easier to get all of his notions, all of his executive orders.
It's the same thing with the DEI program. So many companies are following, his rhetoric and getting rid of these programs that support diversity, equity, and inclusion, when other programs or other companies are doubling down and saying, no, this is something that we, this means something.
So, Ralph, let me ask you this. Inflation as you're experiencing it, is it better or worse than you expected with Trump as president?
That's a hard one to say, because with him, everything, the press makes everything about him negative. So I don't know whether it's worse, but I think it's going to be better under him, because I think we have a right to make the other nations pay.
Ashley, what is your experience with inflation right now?
Well, I live in one of the states that have a huge gas tax. Our gas tax is 60 cents. They tell us it's because our gas needs trucked in here in Pennsylvania. I don't believe them. They're full of crap. Anyway, eggs are coming down. Eggs was $7 and something. It's down to $4 and something.
I have a thing about eggs. I like them, but I was very upset. 60 eggs at Walmart used to be $13. Now they're up to $20 for the 60 eggs. So we have seen the inflation mostly in our area with the grocery prices.
Mark, your experience with inflation?
Right now, with where we are, there's a lot of things that are better. But one of the things that we've done, and this is my opinion on tariffs and how that affects it. If we want to continue to only buy the products that come from other countries, that are actually made in the U.S., then yeah, we're going to pay more. But like for us with eggs, everybody likes to talk about eggs. We have really gotten invested. We never did this before, but where we go to farmers markets, we found people around us that where we can purchase a lot cheaper, and we're supporting locally. So it's required a behavior change on my part, on mine and my wife's part.
I don't drive. I can't see in a store um, at this point. Hopefully, this doesn't change. But part of a store's services is to help um, provide me with someone who can help me shop. They don't do that at a farmer's market.
Trump is always, from the point of view of those who are sympathetic or very staunchly supporting of the president, is always judged on a harshness curve higher than they've ever seen. And they perceive that people like President Biden or President Obama were given a break or treated less harshly, that the curve applied to them was much more gentle. Take that on board and evaluate it from your perspective.
He told us exactly who he is, what he's going to do. And if we chose not to believe it, that's on us. Whereas, it's so I'm looking at it, that there's a difference between Obama and Biden, that they treat others with respect. They treat other countries with respect.
I honestly feel like we're living in the real live Apprentice show that he used to have. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired. No one else did any of these things. So you could not judge them that way, because these people were professional. They represented our government in a professional manner, and they understood that government was not a business.
You got to realize that Trump is not a politician, never will be a politician. He just speaks what he says. Sometimes he goes on way more than he should, but I think he's come in and done a lot of things that we're looking for.
I really disliked the first Trump. Okay, so his first deal. I don't love him now, but I feel like he's better. The first Trump was a junior high kid. I think now he's a high school kid, but he still acts like an immature teenager. And I think that is where I struggle. I like the improvement. I like the growth that we see in him. But the professionalism is not there.
And Mark, that reminds me of the box that I frequently saw checked on my report cards as a child. Room for improvement.
Yes. Yeah. I use that box quite a bit, Major. So I know exactly which one you're talking about.
We're the night before the 100th day. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the year ahead, meaning the next 12 months? Joan, I'll start with you.
Major, got to tell you, I'm pessimistic. We're coming into a constitutional crisis. We truly are. So that's the part that scares me. I don't want to lose our country, but I feel like we're sliding down that slippery slope.
Optimistic.
Explain why.
Because I see the economy getting better. I see the border being more secure.
I think that there's a lot of people that thought they were going to be able to retire, and they're not going to be able to retire. I think that we are in for a rough road when it comes down to financial well-being and suffering. I think that our poorest people are going to suffer the most, and they are the people who always receive the least. And I'm very pessimistic about what's to come in the next year.
Ralph, optimistic or pessimistic?
Optimistic. I think the country's heading in the right direction. I think we're going to see the fruits of all this, and we're going to be better off.
Aziza, optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm very pessimistic, not only for the results of what these policies are doing, like from a practical level, but also what it's doing to our societies and how that's going to affect marginal communities like mine.
I just think we need more unity as a country. I think we need to see Congress actually doing things together and stop adding to the split. I think he needs to realize that he's maybe more than half the country voted for him, but he represents the whole country. And so he needs to think about all sides of it. And I'm hoping that we'll start to see that more. So until we get there, I think it's going to be rough.